Leanne Cross, I'm Public Information Specialist, and I'll be the moderator today. We hope everyone took the opportunity to sign in with HA, and there goes my alarm. Just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the web for the community to access. I want to introduce a few people. Cleon Cawley is our General Manager of Public Works.
Hey, how you doing?
Rob Roth is Senior Manager of Public Works.
How you doing?
Kendall Summers is Parks Division Manager.
All right.
Mike Clendaniel is Parks Planner 3. And Jeff is Property Manager.
All right.
Also in our Public Works team. Thank you, Kevin, for your help, and Ha for your help with the signing in. Wanted to thank Councilman John Cartier. Here's how the event will be the most successful. We ask that you raise your hand to speak. Once we call upon you, you're welcome to ask your question. I'll then call on the Public Works team members to answer. And we do have a set end time of 7 p.m. So we think we'll be able to hear everyone if we follow a nice orderly procedure for question and answer session. Hopefully we won't need to interrupt any of the dialogue, but if your moment to ask a question leads us off topic or into unproductive territory, I may step in to moderate. Our goal is to answer all your questions today, but if time or other conditions prevent that, we have blocked a few minutes at the end of the hour for you to write down your questions. Ha will have a question form, and someone from Public Works will answer your question afterwards. So with that,
Before we get going, if I could, I'd just like to acknowledge Corporal Pierce from our Community Services Police Unit. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you for being an officer.
And of course, we hope you'll introduce yourself when you stand up to ask a question. And with that, I will hand it to Kendall. Great.
All right, Kendall.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Again, I'm Kendall Summers. I'm the Parks Division Manager. I'm responsible for managing all the parks in Newcastle County.
God bless you.
I have great help. Just for a little background, because I know this project's been discussed for quite some time, just to bring everybody up to speed. The actual conversation around the basketball court in Knollwood started actually at the end of 2023. Councilman Cartier and some advocates in the community approached the county, asked for a meeting to discuss how we could improve this site and better serve the community of Knollwood. They came with ambitious ideas for the site. It included taking one basketball court, creating 2 caged-in basketball courts with regulation, NBA backboards and hoops, and making it a destination place for basketball. Now, at the time, we explained that, typically in a neighborhood park, we would go to the community to get input and feedback. We agree that there needs to be an improvement at this site, so we then went forward. We weren't even sure at that time if 2 basketball courts would fit on the site where this basketball court is now, which is on Colby Avenue. So we did some preliminary, like literally just taking dimensions and throwing rectangles on a map to see that it would fit spatially. And we scheduled a community meeting in 2024. It was in March, it was here, it was not well attended, so it's great to see the folks in the community here tonight. And in that we had a very conceptual drawing of 2 courts. And we got some feedback, and there were comments of having one court be for basketball and have the other court have multiple lines to accommodate different types of gameplay. That led us to go back and rework our project and refocus the courts to have 1 basketball court and 1 multi-purpose court is what we tend to call it. And we had a plan with some community support, but it was an unfunded project at that point. So we had an idea to move forward, but we didn't have funding at that time. We had an estimate of what that kind of project would likely be, and at the time in 2024 it was about $250,000. So we were charged with trying to figure out how to make this come to life. At that time, we worked to look for grant funding, outside funding to help pay for it. We worked with a Sixers nonprofit organization, submitted a grant that was unsuccessful. We submitted a grant to the state for outdoor recreation improvements in neighborhoods and communities, and that was successful. which was great. And we also had a couple community organizations. The Lions Club stepped up with a donation to help fund some of the improvements at the site, and Waste Management and Carlos Dupree also stepped up with a donation from Waste Management to help with the site. So with the grant money, we had matching county funds and the donations, we were ready to move forward. And our hopes were to start construction this summer, actually June, but it's July. So earlier this year, we did put the project out to bid. We did some additional design work, put the project out to bid, and what happened between 2023 and 2026? All the prices skyrocketed. The project came in about $100,000 over our anticipated budget, and it made us go back and kind of rethink what we are doing here. At the same time, when this project was out to bid, we heard from the community that there were questions still, that people weren't sure what we were doing, they had questions about what was going on, so we thought it would be a good idea to pause, come back to the community, talk about the project, and figure out how we can move forward. So I'm happy to be here to tell you what we're doing, have us all be on the same page, and entertain any questions or comments that you all might have. So moving forward, what we plan to do at the site is after the budget numbers came back higher, it forced us to relook at the project scope to see what we can accomplish. And we want to move forward with replacing the basketball court that's on Colby Avenue now with an in-kind basketball court, a single court, that will have some improvements on it that include security fencing. It's hard to see unless you come up close, but there's fencing around the court, so it won't be open like it is now. It'll be enclosed court. It'll have a colorized acrylic surfacing, which right now it's just blacktop. We'll update the regulation poles and backboards so they will be to NBA standards, not the typical recreation standards that we have out in the park now. We plan to do some walkway improvements. So I want to say a year and a half ago, a tree came down right in front of the park and pulled up some of the sidewalks, so it's very uneven. So this project, we will fix the walkway. We want to bring it in to make more of an entrance into the site, make it more inviting. We also heard that the memorial planting that is on the site is very important to the community, and we want to honor that. So we can bring the walkway into the site and have, we're going to replace the memorial tree that was planted because it is having some stress. So we'll replace the memorial tree in the center and have spaces for formalized benches to be placed around it, and then continue the pathway to connect to the existing sidewalk. So we wanted to honor what's there, be conscious of budget, be conscious of space. Some of the other issues that we had with the two-court idea were the site capacity. When we got into the design and placed two courts on the site, we were right up against the adjacent neighbors. We were 10 feet off of the property line. We want to be conscious of being good neighbors, and we don't think it's wise to have a basketball court with bouncing ball activity right outside of someone's window. If we went forward with two courts, the whole parcel would be impervious surface. So it would be all court, there would be no green space, no grass, no real shrubbery, it would be all paved. That created some stormwater concerns for us, so we wanted to back away from having all paved surfaces. The other issue that came up with the two-court idea is parking. This is a neighborhood park. We have on-street parking, and we don't want to make it a huge destination place because we don't have places where people can park, and we don't want to cause conflicts with parking in front of people's houses or taking away the residents' parking spaces. And honestly, with park operation standards, a neighborhood park is developed to serve the immediate community. So we want this basketball court to serve the residents of Knollwood. We think that we've taken some extra steps in providing an improved court that we wouldn't necessarily do in a neighborhood park. It would usually be blacktop with our recreational basketball backboards. But we do see the need, and we have the desire to do something really nice here that the community can enjoy and that will be an asset to the development. So that's kind of an overview of what we plan to do. Wanted to talk to you about it, get your feedback, answer questions, and hopefully, once we move forward, we'll be able to get to construction shortly. And that's really it. I'll entertain any questions or thoughts.
I have a
Yes.
question.
Sure. Can you say your name? I'm sorry.
My name's Sandra, I'm a resident.
All right.
Can you define to me community support? What does that
sorry?
mean? Community support, you said, yeah, we had community support, can you define that to me? What?
In the beginning, you had said when there was,
So we had a community meeting. It was sparsely attended. 1 or 2 people were here.
so that at that point you thought you had community support to move forward with the multi-purpose and basketball court.
That's what we heard when we met with the community. We advertised, we did our due diligence to try to get this out to people to let them know.
Yeah, can I just make a comment? So this all came about when a gentleman by the name of Tony Benson, with Save Our Parks or something like that, he has his own nonprofit organization. Supposedly Tony talked to people in the community, and his concern was that he was talking, the little kids couldn't play up there because the big kids were always up there. So that's where this all came about to start, was to have 2 courts up there so the little kids and the big kids could play at the same time. And of course, what I understand now is we've had budget constraints and stuff like that, so, and the planning, is just not gonna work out, unfortunately. But that's how it started. Tony Benson apparently was up here, and he talked to people in the community, so that's where this all started from. Yep, was him and his nonprofit organization. And he actually approached John Cartier in the county about it, so that's where it all came from, so it all started. So we were under the impression that there was support in the community based on what Tony told us, so. yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Just, go ahead, please, Sam.
Oh,
No.
I have more questions. So
Sure.
you said you're gonna have fencing?
Yes.
Why are you gonna have fencing?
It's a basketball design that's popular in suburban areas. It helps keep the ball in bounds and in court and not flying off all over the place. It also frees up the green space around it for other activities if people want to be in the park doing things.
So is there gonna be a gate?
On the court, yes.
Is it gonna be locked?
It will not be locked.
And are there gonna be hours that they can use it?
Our parks are open from sunrise to sunset.
But they won't be locked at sunset, it sounds like.
No, there's.
They won't be locked at
They're not gonna be
sunset,
locked, they're gonna be closed. So who's gonna maintain it after it's all said and done? Who's responsible for maintaining it? If this is all
The
donation?
county parks department is.
So if we have problems, just call the county?
I have a concern with the fencing because I don't know if you're aware, but there was a shooting that people were at the basketball court and they were shot at. If you enclose that area, they're like sitting ducks. Like seriously, how would they get out if somebody, because the shooting took place from the street. So you have them enclosed in an area with a fence, and if a car pulls up, you know what I'm saying? They're now enclosed and are in a lot more danger than they are if they were able to run.
Understood. Good comment. We can look at taking the fencing off and leaving it open, similar to what's on site.
I mean, I just feel it's safer to
Yeah,
leave it
understood.
open.
My grandson was in that pub when that basketball court when that happened, when the shooting occurred.
I can understand that that's terrifying.
Maybe just have like fencing at the back ends behind the backboards, so if you miss a shot or something, it doesn't go too far back, but the sides are open.
Yeah, or the front and back of it.
Just wanted to echo the concern about the community support note. And by the way, Ms. Kendall Summers, I hear great things about you. I know you came from state parks, and so John Cartier sings your praises all the time. And so we've interacted over email as well on different things. So I appreciate all that you do and your help. Just want to be highlight just being careful about saying something has community support when we have spoken with maybe 2 residents and then are taking the word of Tony Benson, which he may or may not be telling the truth. I don't, but it's taking his word on it. And then all of a sudden, a whole lot of money is going behind for a neighborhood that has a history of things happening to it without their consent or participation in. So using community support, particularly in a neighborhood like Knollwood, I would imagine is a very sensitive, situation.
Sure, understood and appreciate that comment. Look, it's part of the reason we're here tonight, right? When we heard that there were community concerns still lingering and that people were confused, we
Yes.
wanted to come back out and have this meeting. So I appreciate that, and I'm happy that we could reconnect.
And there was a pause too. So there was a pause, which is a great move. I had another question just about so the spaces for the benches. Are benches being put in as well, or spaces being made for benches to be added later?
They'll be put in.
Right on. Okay. There was originally a much bigger scope, and there were some reasons you laid out: parking, impervious surfaces, tight spots next to neighbors for reducing it down to one basketball court.
Mm-hmm.
Was the project funded for the bigger scope, and is there not use for that funding anymore, or was it there not enough funding before because of the high prices that came up and the funding is still present?
We initially investigated going with the larger scope. We didn't have the budget to cover the larger scope. The budget that we have will only cover the scope of what we're presenting tonight. So there will be no more funding after this project is finished that would have gone to a second court.
And that's for good reasons, like you listed.
Right. Yeah.
So
I mean,
there's-
it's really two separate reasons, right? We don't have the funding and the budget, and then after we dug into the design of the courts, there are all these other constraints that go along with the budget issue.
And can you state how much funding is coming from each source?
There's $125,000 from a state grant, from the Outdoor Recreation Parks and Trails grant. We're matching that with $110,000 in county money, $15,000 from the Claymont Lions Club, and $5,000 from Waste Management.
Great, thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you. Are there more questions?
Yes. So I live right across the street from the park. I live at 36 Toby Avenue. My name is Eric. I have lived 14 years in here. I have seen all the shootings that happen and all that stuff. One of the things that happened that I really do not like it was the fact that they put those signs in there that nobody allowed the parking in there. So if you guys do that, so it's gonna be a lot more people coming here and block my driveway and park in front of my house. So do y'all thinking about removing those signs, or those signs gonna stay in there?
It is something that we can look into, of removing them. The signs were put in because of a particular issue that we were having in the park. I think that issue's been resolved, so we can relook at the.
Yeah, I got a
parking.
ticket. I got a ticket because I parked my van up front, across the street. Me living in there, and I got a ticket, living across the street. Like, that, I think that was not fair. And another question that I have is that I think that it would be beautiful if you guys thinking about senior citizen and people that walking, because if you guys making a walking area around that park and clean all these grasses or bushes that is around, I think it would be beneficial also for older people and older generation. So,
Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but the site improvements will clean up a lot of what is there, all that shrubbery. This concept, actually, where the existing basketball court is, that basketball court will be milled up and removed, and the orientation will be set a little bit closer to Colby Avenue. It won't be all the way back in the corner,
okay.
which opens up a little bit more, and the shrubs that, the junk shrubs that are growing along the property line behind it will be cleaned up and opened up, so it will open up the site.
Okay, and what about the fence around the park? That gonna be replaced, or they're gonna leave it up to the neighbors?
We need to definitively determine if it's ours or if it's the adjacent property owners. If it's
Okay.
ours, we would replace it. If it's not, we wouldn't.
Most of those are the property owners. There's a lot of differences in fences.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Most of those are the property owners.
The private property owners.
Property owners that adjacent the property, so.
Okay.
Maybe you had raised your hand a minute ago?
I was just gonna ask the same question that Eric asked about the parking.
Sure, I have a question. So the path that you're creating towards the front of the basketball court, can that path go around the basketball court to allow maybe seniors to walk? Let's say if it's a quarter of a mile or a third of a mile, like the path going around the basketball court as a path to walk and make it sort of like generational in the space, so seniors are able to enjoy it. Piggybacking off of what was said, where now that path can go around the basketball court. Is that an option, but doesn't have to be?
We can look at it. It's gonna be site constraints and to see really honestly how long a segment can be. A lot of times, because it's such a small site and we're putting a basketball court, the segment might be so short that the cost benefit of putting it in might be very difficult, but we can certainly look at that.
And you'd start asking them? Okay.
Thank you.
Same question?
No.
Do we have more questions?
So do we have any other choice that we can use those funds to create something different perhaps? Or it has to be used only in the basketball court?
So the funds, specifically the grant funds, were for specifically the basketball court.
For the basketball court, okay.
So I do have another question. Not about the basketball court, but just in general. So how do you go about getting a grant for things in the neighborhood? What's the process?
Well, that's a big question. Depends on what things you're talking about. I can only speak to park items. So with parks, if we have a plan for a park improvement, we have grant opportunities that we are eligible to apply for to get. So obviously, we didn't have the grant in mind for this, but when we had the idea to improve the basketball court and we didn't have funding for it, hey, let's try to get a grant. There are also grant funds that nonprofits are eligible for that we might not be eligible for. So, communities can reach out and get grants. It really depends on what you're doing. As far as other community things.
I might be able to help with that one.
Okay. As far as other community things, there are all kinds of grants out there, but I'm gonna lead you to the councilman to identify some of those. Do you know any off the top of your head?
So county council has a grant program. They're small grants that are available to nonprofits that apply. So, that's always, something that we take care of, but they're not, they're, $3,000 and $4,000 grants. But they're certainly available, and we need to have an application from an eligible nonprofit. And I think there's a question in the back of the room.
Okay, 1 second, I'll get you next. You were gonna add.
Well, it sort of ties into, we were going to present to the community this, probably in September, the concept of Knollwood becoming, and the area up this way, becoming a blueprint community. And what that would do would be, there'd be intense community meetings and an advisory committee would be on the blueprint community. And we can talk about what are the wishes for the community? What would the community like to see? And what we can do then is work on, okay, where could that funding come from? Is there a DENREC program? Is there a DELDOT program? Is there a foundation program that we could tap into? Because just like this park, it's specific for that use. But the other things, we need to find out what the community is looking for and how we can achieve it. Maybe from a whole bunch of different places, but we first need to identify what the issues are. So, and we're talking maybe some bigger dollars to take care of some of these things. So that's something we could all, when this starts up, hopefully if the community's engaged, we can address that and work with the University of Delaware, the GAP program, Grant Assistance Program, and their masters at identifying where these monies are. So it could be council grants, could be a grant from the county executive, or any of these, even federal grants.
State grants too.
Well, yeah, for the different agencies and stuff. So it's something that we could definitely work on together.
And Mr. Sadler, does the neighborhood know who you are? Can you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, Brett Sadler, I think they do, but Brett
yeah.
Sadler, I'm the executive director of the Claymont Renaissance Development Corporation.
We had one question from the back.
Yeah, how about lighting for the basketball court?
At this point, we don't have funds to add lighting. We typically don't have lights in our parks because they're closed
Closed at
from
dark.
dusk to dawn. So that's not planned at this time. We had discussed it early on and the funding is just difficult.
It would be hard anyway for the neighbors.
Right.
Yeah.
I just have one question for, what was your name again?
Brett Sadler.
So you were talking about having a meeting in September? So how will we, as a community, be notified of the date and time?
Well,
You're in our group, so if you post it in
Yeah,
our group, then I'm
social
sure
media,
that-
I'm trying to do a little better than just Facebook posts. I hate Facebook. But it's such a small community. We can do, just like we did with the Recovering Claymont Lives, the opioid, we can do just flyers indoors. I think that's really the way to, I mean, social media too, but I think that's the way to go about it too.
So I, co-peers, have the same idea that you have. We spoke at the town hall thing. So we have what we call reverse 911. I think you all probably have got it when we was up here a few weeks ago for the play zone, where we just send calls to the community saying, hey, we're going to be out here for that event. So once we get discussing it, that's the thing that we can do is actually send calls out to the community saying, hey.
That there was to be a meeting?
Yeah.
I didn't know you did that. That's awesome. That'd be great. Let's talk after. Michelle, I need to talk to you too, because there's something else going on with it.
Okay, thank you.
Don't run off.
I won't. I don't run fast anyway.
I'm in the interim executive director position here, and we are discussing with the new board the options of grants for the community. And as everyone has asked, are there opportunities to receive these grants? So those are things we're discussing now with the new board.
Gotcha.
What makes sense and where it can be best utilized. Right now, we're focused on fixing the building because it's, right now it's very aged. It's a 106-year-old building and it has a lot of interior damage in the basement, water lock and all. And we will continue to grow the space so that it becomes safer to be inside, and then the spectrum will be to, in the near future, hopefully, expand it, just so the community can benefit from the space. But at this time, we want to utilize and make this space safe and preserve the integrity of the space as well, because it is a historical monument within the community.
Sure.
So we'll move forward and inform.
You have a little gem here, because not
It
many
is.
communities have a space like this right in their neighborhood.
Right.
Do we have more questions?
Actually, one more. But I don't want to put you on the spot. Actually, two more. One, can you explain the cameras that are there? Are there going to be cameras installed on the? No cameras. Never mind. Okay. The other thing, any other public works projects on the horizon up here that you're thinking of? Anything could be minor to major or anything?
In Knollwood?
Yeah, no,
Not right,
specifically.
not right now. There's
Not right
nothing
now?
on
I just wanted to say, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you guys are responsible for putting the new playground equipment in around here, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
A number of years ago?
Yeah, Balfour, the play structure, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, yeah, so.
Yeah, I have one concern regarding the sidewalk. The sidewalk is really, really bad. I don't know if you guys have the opportunity to walk around the Knollwood and Copper Street, but we have a lot of senior citizens that walk around. We have a lot of kids to run around. The kids cannot run roller skate. I have a daughter of my own. She cannot roller skate on the sidewalk. So that's a big concern. There are cheap concrete sidewalks everywhere. I mean, and this is one thing that I see when I see all that money getting spent and to serve that purpose. That not gonna be help any senior citizen or little kids. So my vision is like, Josh should also get another program or something to help senior citizens. I know by hand how hard it is when the winter time coming and the snow shovel is coming and all the sidewalks is 1 inch apart and 2 inches apart. It makes it really hard. So I think the sidewalk for me it would be like,
No, that's
like
great.
I mean,
We actually were able to, over and over the colony, pull together resources. Representative Lambert's Community Transportation Fund, Senator Siegfried's Transportation Funds, the Newcastle Conservation District, and the CRDC. We pulled together money, and we're getting a huge chunk of the alleys paved. I don't know if you've ever been in Overlook alleys, but some of them are really bad. So we'll be getting them paved hopefully this summer or fall.
Yeah.
But that's something, it takes a while to pull it together, but you gotta have it, you gotta have the community support, saying, we want this, you gotta get into a plan that's blessed, and then that gives, John's county, but that gives, for the state folks,
okay.
the ammunition, and
Yeah.
the CRDC to be a pain in the ass too, to get it done. Are we always successful? No, but we gotta start there.
Yes.
And that's,
Thank you.
to highlight the point you made previously, that is exactly what he's talking about. If we identify those things that the community wants to get done, we can better identify
Yes.
opportunities.
That's one that a lot of people want on the sidewalk.
Yes.
I think,
Okay, so back to sidewalks. So who's actually in charge of the sidewalks?
Are
Like-
responsible.
Sidewalks are part of the DelDOT right-of-way.
Okay.
And the way DelDOT handles that, the county is not involved with sidewalks. DelDOT designates that responsibility to the individual homeowner.
What about,
That's what
What about
happens.
if there's no homes there?
Yeah,
I'm talking
what
about the monument.
what if it's in front of county
There's
land?
branches on the sidewalk, I can't walk
If
down
it's in
there.
front of county land, I would assume it's probably gonna be our responsibility.
So, have,
which is why we wanna fix where the
No,
sidewalk
not,
is
yeah.
done, but.
I have another question. So we're going back 50-some years, okay?
Yep.
I've been here a long time. Been here a long time. Grew up here since I was born, okay? Lying, 9 months. The sidewalk by the park on B Street, they had a summer program. I helped put that in. It's been replaced, I'm sure, since then. But they helped do the sidewalks. I helped lay the cement, whatever it was back then. So do they still have those kind of programs? So you get teenagers, instead of doing bad things, do good things for the neighborhood?
They had like a work program in the
It was
summertime
a
when we
summer
were growing up.
Nice.
That's great.
Yeah, John remembers that, right, John?
You can
You were,
do
you were
that.
working with the
It was
county.
only
right?
I've been around 50 years, not here.
So, just saying, like,
And-
that would help, some kind of program, like,
Yeah, because it gets the
Great idea.
kids, like, you know, you're doing positive things for your own neighborhood rather than the negative.
instead of breaking them up, fix them. You know what I'm saying? Just something to think about.
Sure.
so given that, DelDOT, maybe the county's responsibility, one thing that always confused me, which John was a huge help with, and a number of others, was the crosswalk to Woodshaven Cruise on Darley Road, the county park there. Because this, huge development, Darley Green was built, brand new library, and right across the street from the library, you get this amazingly huge park, and the Darley Raceway, what it was called, probably 50 years ago, right? Doesn't have sidewalks on it, so it's impossible to get over, but there's a crosswalk now, thanks to a lot of people. So that kind of like investment without also investing in the infrastructure around it, I think, maybe we're in a good part of the process where we can look at, can we talk to DelDOT to help with that? Or can the county look to see, okay, well, maybe if we have some sidewalk funds, maybe we can help make this whole area more accessible for the people who want to come to the newly constructed basketball court.
So, yes. When we redo a park, we definitely look at accessibility and how ingress and ingress and egress work. So, for instance, we just redid Bechtel Park.
Yes.
And looking at ingress, egress, and how people move within the site was something we took into account when we did that. When we're looking at redoing this site, we're looking at making those improvements to the pedestrian walkways that are there. So it's something that we incorporate as we do our capital projects. We do have a working relationship with DelDOT. We have a park, Banning Park, that we just did major improvements to for some of the sports fields. DelDOT's getting ready to do a road improvement project there, and we're working with them to try to get them to provide the sidewalks to enter the park where we've put our sidewalk up to that stuff. So there is interagency coordination going on, and obviously any community input to help us identify these areas is helpful.
So has that, and that's just to be clarified, has that been looked at for this site? All the sidewalk in front of the county land parcels?
Just for this particular parcel on Colby Avenue.
And any adjacent county parcels, I guess. So I guess all the county land that is touching the park, the basketball court, sidewalk. If there's any more county land touching the basketball court, maybe that's the only parcel.
This is.
So
yeah,
all
and
the,
it's just the frontage where the sidewalk is, which is what we'll be replacing.
all the sidewalk in front of the basketball court. Nice. Okay.
Of the county parcel. So obviously it'll be sidewalk that is older and then new sidewalk until the other end of the parcel.
Sure, and maybe there's something that we can look at. I wonder, because it's probably since the people, whoever will be out there doing the laying of maybe there's like, not that much more money to see if we can do a little bit more of, this stretch. Maybe we can draw up some community support, see if we can get another grant, just a little bit more to do more of that sidewalk there.
So we wouldn't be able to do it because it's private property, and that would involve the private resident
Sure.
having to do that. But if it's something that can come from the community and work with that property owner, sure.
I've got two questions. I'm gonna call Tom and then I'll call you, Sol.
Yeah,
So-
my other question was.
Go ahead, Sol.
I'm sorry, thank you, Tom. If that were the case, what about the property around the playground, right? The sidewalks are pretty in disrepair. Can that be something that would be looked at as well to repair, since now we're discussing county code parcels?
So it won't be part of this construction project, but it is something that we can look at. In this last capital budget that was recently passed, we do have some dollars for accessibility improvements, and that's how we would look to that pot of money to make those types of improvements.
Right, because that is county as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think that's what a mention was made about that, about around down there, the park down there, the sidewalk, were you talking about the
Right by the
sidewalk?
playground.
Yeah,
That's all
so
county as well.
that's something down the road we could look at, that would be awesome.
It's something that we'll look at, but I'll be completely honest, we have a lot of those things around the
sure.
county and we have to prioritize, but it'll be on our radar to investigate and look at.
I think we also need to bring Larry Lambert into the picture. The state has like 20 times the amount of money that the county does, and the state has access to, obviously, we need to bring other people in like Larry Lambert in and see if, what can be worked out for these sidewalks. Is there some type of funding? Because there was years ago, they did have programs like that, where they each one of the senators or something had a little bit of money in their coffers to do sidewalk repairs and stuff like that. This is going back a few years. I don't know what it is now, but there was money in the old days set aside for that. So that's something we need to talk to. We need to sit down with Larry Lambert and say, hey, Larry, what can we do here? Can you help us? And maybe that's something we could bring in on that meeting or something. I don't know. With Greg Siegfried's been really helpful too. I don't know.
I was just going to say, it might be helpful, because we're talking about funding, especially for county funding, for them to understand as they're having the conversations, just the timing of when we go through our capital budget process, which all of these are part of. So when is it opportune for them to have those conversations, to reach out to us and say, hey, this is something we would like you to look at as we look at all of our capital projects? Because they're obviously, everyone across the county is looking for things from us, but if you want to be in that mix, there's a timing piece to it as well.
Generally, we start putting our capital budget together so our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30, and we start putting our capital budget for the next fiscal year together the end of summer, early fall. So September is probably the best timeline, if not late August, to start talking about projects.
For the following fiscal
I mean,
year.
right now is a great time to bring it up so that we can go check it out and see what it is. But we start doing our budget and entering projects into what our next year's plan is in August, September.
And potentially 21 months could be the timeline from a conversation.
Correct.
Still, if it's on the radar, get the ball started, right? Yeah. Yep, so that's, I think that's the key.
I mean, we started talking about this in 2023, right?
Yeah, it takes years, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for not introducing myself. I'm Robbie Anstead. I organize with the Fairmont Coalition for Environmental Justice. And sir, can you say your name again for me?
I'm Cleon Cawley, I'm the
Cleon.
General Manager for Public Works.
Cleon, no, that was a great point that you were just saying. I was wondering, so who can we, if September is like a good time to start talking about things, you know, so we have community meetings in the summer, the spring, summer, you know, and then we kind of bring together a list of needs or concerns. We come to who in September?
You could reach out to me.
Directly?
Yeah.
And your position is? You'll probably be there forever because you're so
I'm
good.
the Parks
but-
Division Manager.
Parks
So,
Division.
well, I'll say this, if it's a parks project, come to me. And
Okay.
if it's something else, I can,
Go to John for all things.
I would say John, or I can help try to lead you in the right direction, but my jurisdiction is parks. So if it's something outside of the parks purview,
Yes.
it might need to bounce to someone else.
So go to John in the fall.
And you can always email, we have a general email that is publicworks@newcastlede.gov. That will also be a good email to contact.
Thank you. Public Works DE.
Publicworks@newcastlede.gov. Do we have more questions about the basketball project?
I don't have a question, but thank you for putting it back to one. I think that's just a better option for the whole neighborhood.
Well, when we did it, we thought maybe it would be well received.
It is beautiful. Thank
It
you.
is. It
really
looks
is
nice.
beautiful.
So we have some more work to do from the comments here. We'll go back and look at what we have and see what we can do. And once we have a final decision, we'll reach back out to the community center to update you on our next steps.
So the fencing can be removed, that's not a problem. Gotcha.
I knew it was good.
There you go, your budget, your money for your lights. There you go.
Or the pathway.
Oh, the highway. So-
Councilman Cartier, did you want to?
Yeah, I want to kind of make a few comments.
They're gonna put it on the center.
First of all, I'm extremely pleased with the concept, especially, and I just want to underscore this, the sensitivity shown to the Brenda Cox Memorial, who was the young child who was killed in the woods tragically here, that we're going to really create something truly memorable so she will never be forgotten.
That's
And,
nice.
I'm very glad to see that kind of treatment of that. One of the things I wanted to kind of tell the community and talk a little bit about, we're in a very kind of, microscopic view of this county park here. I want to kind of talk about the bigger reality, and I just want to also underscore something that was brought up by Ms. Robles, talking about Knollwood is a historical community, because it is. It goes back to the days when the steel mill was in operation. It was the workers' housing for the steel mill workers, and Knollwood is an interesting place. It has a wonderful endowment of open space and a good community design in terms of the housing types, and it really deserves much more investment in my view, and a lot more work with the community. And we have done over the years incremental steps. And just to give you an idea of the open space component of the Knollwood community, that's a very interesting story. We initially replaced I kind of got into it, replacing the Balfour play structures, which were, I received a lot of complaints that they were, in tough shape and dangerous. So we took care of that. We got a state-of-the-art play structure there, which the community really utilizes. I'm very pleased with that. And then I got into the property issue here, which was really, I gotta say, a very unique situation. The open space properties in Knollwood were not owned by the county. They had county park signs, but they were not owned by the county. It was owned by a defunct corporation called the Knollwood Development Corporation. So I prevailed upon my administration at that time with their legal people I was saying, we put our signs here identifying that this is county parkland, it really isn't. So we went in and spent 3 years in Superior Court to eliminate the ownership of the defunct corporate entity and then to actually take control of all the open space in Knollwood as public open space and parkland. So that was a big achievement. And then since then, it's all about, how can we improve what is here since we have formal ownership on behalf of the public. So we've been following up with, I'm sure you've seen all this, all the cleanups in the woodlands around. We've removed a terrible legacy tire dump. One was like, what, Robbie, 300-400 tires in a really great community effort with our Public Works Department.
That's right.
And that was a great collaboration, and we need to do more work like that. And so now we're kind of looking at this basketball court situation, which is a very old installation. It definitely needs a modernization and a renovation. So this is kind of the whole idea of what's going on with the county and what I'm trying to do to honor and to polish and to renovate and to make Knollwood, better, safer, and cleaner. And so this is, another step along that path. We've got many steps to go, but I'm very encouraged by this. It's well within our funding. We can accomplish this. We're gonna, make a really great memorial to Brenda Cox. And so I want to thank the department and all the planners and our general manager and everybody in the county, for putting this together and bringing it out to the community so that we can get your feedback. And we're going to continue to make progress. I know that we got to do something with the sidewalks on the Balfour Parkland. That's another thing that I've kind of like put in the back of my head right now, to deal with. And we're going to continue to hopefully do more cleanups in the woodlands around. Now, the other thing about this whole pattern of acquiring ownership, why it's really important, because I know over the years there have been, real estate developers have looked at the woodlands for development, and so by the fact that the county owns this as public parkland, that forever protects, the woodlands and all the public open spaces here against development. The other thing we did, County Council adopted a new zoning category. We voted on some of these ordinances last night. We created a public lands zoning category. It's a letter P, so that all of our public lands are now housed in a zoning category, which denotes public lands, which denotes permanent protection. So that has also been applied to all the properties that are public lands in Knollwood. So a lot of progress, a lot of work, and I look forward to continue to work with the community to do things to make Knollwood a great place to live. And with that, I'll close my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. At this time, I would have recommended that we read any of the questions that were submitted by the community by email, but there were not any. But please note that if your neighbors have any thoughts, comments, questions after the meeting, that publicworks@newcastlede.gov email address, they can be sent there. And wanted to just thank all the attendees on behalf of Public Works. Thank Kendall and Mike and Rob and Cleon and my team for being here today. Thank you to the councilman for attending. Thank you to the committee, the board for spreading the word. And we thank you all so much for coming out. We hope to get to know you all a little bit better.
Thank you. All right, good job. That was beautiful.
I got one last question. I can't live with this. So the property that we cleaned back there, so you guys trying to claim ownership also to the whole property behind there, to the crib?
So all of the open space in this community was owned by a defunct corporate entity.
Okay.
Including the woodlands.
Including the woodlands?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So that has all been resolved by Superior Court. Newcastle County was conferred ownership of these lands as public lands. They were the stewards for, the people of these lands to protect them in perpetuity as public open space.
Okay.
So yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very cool.
All right, I would say that's a meeting.